First of all, thanks to Jay and Ann and Dave and Kinder for inviting me over here. It's my first time to Dave's Farm. What an honor to see this place, let alone be a speaker here. I'm from Emporia, Kansas, which for those of you that aren't familiar, I'm kind of halfway between Topeka and Wichita. We're on the eastern slopes of the Flint Hills, and this is the first time I've ever spoke where I was considered to be in a semi-arid environment. So our average annual rainfall in Emporia is 37 inches, but we've been dealing with drought now off and on for the last 13, 14 years. So we may be in the new norm, and I think that is even more important for why we're here today, and the importance of building soil health is building that resiliency. The new norm for us, our last normal pattern was in the 1990s, where our first dry year was 1999. Since 1999, we've had 3 years that were average or above. 2 of those was 2008 and 2009. We had the wettest 24 months ever recorded. The rest of the time we've been below normal. Since 2010, our normal now is 6 to 8 months with almost zero precipitation, and then we get it all at once. Our last rainfall event, we are actually due our next one. So our last rainfall event was the last week of July, first 2 weeks of August last year, which August is our driest month, and we received 18 inches of rain in 16 days. So if you don't have a way to start catching these events that we're getting, we're drying out really fast, and I'll have a picture tomorrow of my neighbors to the west and what they're dealing with in their new norm, and it's not pretty. So today, what we're going to focus on today is the grazing aspect of my operation. I think everybody you've heard so far today, I'm going to be repeating a lot of things, but I'm probably coming at it from a little bit different angle than the previous speakers, because I consider myself more of a farmer first, grazer second. Where everybody else that spoke so far today kind of has their emphasis on grazing, we're looking to bring the livestock back onto the farming operation to help build our soil health. And with me, it's all about farming in nature's image and trying to mimic what Mother Nature did in her system. And the last piece of the puzzle, I certainly hope not. I think it's just the next step, the next piece of the puzzle for us, and that is integrating the livestock back onto the land just as Mother Nature did for thousands of years. And I'm going to talk about diversity. I think it's really, really important, and not just diversity in the plants that you heard about all morning, but also diversity in your livestock, because when Mother Nature managed the prairies, it wasn't just the bison that did it. There was antelope, elk, the predators, bear, all these things that roam the prairies, and they were all a very important part of the ecosystem. So just like this picture here, I think it's important to have diversity in your livestock as well. And we'll talk about intensity. The more intense you manage, the higher the reward, whether it's with the livestock or with the soil. This is how we started cover cropping, and because we were of the mindset of dollars and cents and not of focusing on the soil, everything had to make money, and it had to make money in that given season. So for the first several years, we were harvesting our livestock, or harvesting our cover crops, most of it mechanically, either chopped or baled. And what we saw, where we were the most intense with our farm ground, as far as keeping a living root in the ground 24/7, 365, our organic matter was flatlining. And where we had no till with no cover crops but a diverse rotation, we were outpacing where we were doing the cover crops. Was it the cover crops' fault? The presentation earlier about holistically thinking, that anytime you have a problem in your system, we always want to blame the system. It wasn't the cover crop's fault, it was my management of the system that failed. We were harvesting, we were removing all of our nutrients, all of our carbon to make a few bucks. We found out that once we went away from this and started to manage it with livestock or leaving it to feed the below ground livestock, our organic matter was going up, and also our dollars per acre was going up. And besides, once we remove this, there's also another aspect. Doug talked about hay being very, very disturbing to the soil. How disturbing is it to your pocketbook? This is extremely disturbing on the financial side as well. And we also, this would be another part of that. So these are two things we no longer want in our operation. thing that cover crops and an emphasis on soil health and the key of bringing livestock in is all the choices we now have. And we want diversity and density, which brings us more choices. And so when you plant diversity, we have lots of different options we can do with these different crops. This is Jay here. This is some things we're starting to work on. Jay's taking this to North Dakota now, is planting a cash crop, and it's been talked about here a little bit earlier, cash crops with living cover crops or companion crops. And some of the options this gives us is this is a 20-way mix that we plant after a cereal harvest, like winter wheat, winter barley. We'll plant a half to 2/3 of a rate of a warm season mix with a full rate of a cool season mix, plus a full rate of something like sunflowers. We'll make sure sunflowers are the tallest thing in the mix, which gives us the option of harvesting this sunflower crop as a grain crop, and look at what we have left for the above and below ground livestock. We can come in and graze this, or we can just leave it as cover. And here we are now as we get later in the season, the cool season, things are starting to pop up through underneath the canopy of the warm season cover. Other things that we're looking at, and Doug talked about this with Harry Cope in Missouri, is the possibility of grazing a crop like this. This is planted into a white clover mix, so you would conceivably have energy here from the grain, dry matter in the stalk, and protein in the clover. Now our operation has gone completely grass finished, so we're no longer interested in harvesting grain like this, but it would be an option. And to me, harvesting with livestock makes so much more sense than harvesting with machinery. We can do it so much cheaper, carbon footprint is so much less, and we've got all of our fertility for next year in place without having to be mechanically hauled out. This is some work that Dwayne Beck's doing at the Dakota Lakes Research Farm here in South Dakota. 3 years ago, he sowed 3 pounds of alfalfa in with this corn. And by the way, this particular plot here is now 24 years consecutive corn. This is non-BT, non-stacked, non-Roundup. Well, this here side of the plot actually is Roundup Ready corn, because he uses Roundup Ready alfalfa. But, that's just for this side of the plot. The other half of the plot it's all strictly conventional corn. 24 consecutive years. It's another reason for building soil health. Let the soil biologically manage your pest. But I think another really important key for us yet, and it's really, we haven't even scratched the surface of annual cover cropping, but I think the real key is perennial covers. And I think no matter where you live, wet or dry, this is where we need to be. Annual cover crops can only do so much. They can only root so deep, only live so long, they can only recover and regenerate so fast. We have to find a way to get perennials in the system. And on our farm, we're working on a perennial rotation, much like what the Argentinians did in the 90s. We'll be 6 to 8 years into a perennial crop, a perennial cover crop that'll be mob grazed, and then we'll go back and we'll either pasture crop it with a grain or go back purely to cash cropping with grains for 6 to 8 years and then back into perennials. This is a long-term rotation, and I usually preface this by asking guys, you know, and since we're already into April, most guys have their cropping plan for this year. How many guys have their cropping plan for next year? Dan's, don't come on. Everybody else is asleep except for Dan, I guess. You know, we've become so focused, guys, on the bottom line and trying to make enough money today to operate tomorrow. We need to step back and start thinking, not just what our farm's going to look like next year, what's our farm going to look like in 10 years? What's our farm going to look like in 50 years? How about 100 years? What are you going to leave your kids and grandkids? One thing about a rotation like this that makes you think is, you know, this is a rotation I might not even outlive. This is long-term planning for the future for us. And I think you've heard this morning the importance of having perennials for that deep rooting. We have to have perennials if we're truly going to fix the water cycle, the mineral cycle, collect 100% maximum sunlight harvest. And guys, I think the future in agriculture, the next 50 years, the 3 most important things we're going to be talking about, number 1 is water. And I know that's hard for you guys in this part of the country to understand, but from 30 miles west of me to the west coast, water is the number 1 issue today. And if you think the city is going to give us water to farm with in the future while they die of thirst, you're wrong. Water is going to be the key in the next 50 years in ag, and we better be efficient in how we're using it. And also think that energy and food safety are going to be second, third, right behind that. And so we need to start working on things like fixing the water cycle that we spent 100 years screwing up. This is just another picture of our perennial mix. This is our second year into this mix and the first time the cattle went across it. And we also put diversity in our perennials mixes also, grasses, legumes, broadleaves. And I talked about pasture cropping. This is a cereal rye planted into a brome crop. And I think these are other things that we need to be looking at as well, is harvesting our annual cash crops out of a perennial pasture. So starting in 2003, when we started grazing cover crops just on trial basis, we were doing some rotational grazing, but it was it was not very intense. Once I met Gabe Brown and Neil Dennis, I found out I'm not much of a rotational grazer, but starting in 2010, we converted into a mob grazing, again, trying to imitate what Mother Nature does with the buffalo, keeping the herd tight and moving them often. And these are some of the guys that if you ever get the chance, you need to go listen to. You've got one of them here today, Doug Peterson, Gabe Brown, Joshua Dukart from North Dakota. Joshua is where I got my holistic training from. Kenny Miller, also from Mandan, North Dakota. I think Kenny's probably the most underrated soil health grazer on the planet. I mean, this guy, he has a true understanding. Neil Dennis, he is Gabe's mentor from Saskatchewan. If you want to talk about intensity, Neil's stocking rate is north of 1 million pounds per acre. Yeah, run that number through your head. If you're like me, you're trying to see how many semis you can stack on an acre, right? This guy is intense. And then this is Paul Brown. He is Gabe's son, and I think this is the future of production agriculture right here. Paul never knew there was a box, and if you can graze it, he has it. Whether it has feathers, hair, hooves, feet, he doesn't care. He wants to graze it and turn it into cash. And I think this is the kid that will change production agriculture in the 21st century. So I talked about diversity and intensity, and we've talked about livestock all morning, but all I've seen so far are the hoofed ones. And I think we need diversity. So we've brought chickens into our herd, or into our operation. We didn't have to buy or rent one more acre. And now we're not only making the steak for supper, but we also have the eggs for breakfast. And, well, I see chickens out here too, Dave. and everything I have, I want it for multiple purposes, whether it's a plant, like a radish that's in charge of recycling nutrients or digging a hole for infiltration. My livestock, I expect the same thing. They do multiple things. The chickens, not only are they supplying my eggs for breakfast, but they're also scavengers. They're cleaning up manure piles, they're my fly control on my cows. They do multiple things for me. And when Lynette brought the chickens on the farm, she decided better have some for meat, not just eggs. So we also have meat birds the layers are allowed to free range behind the cows, but the meat birds we keep in a chicken tractor, and it is moved daily as the chickens progress in age on cover crops. Well, it wasn't long after the chickens showed up that Lynette wanted to get lambs. This was a little harder for me to swallow. I won't tell you what we called lambs in my part of Kansas for my 50 years, but it wasn't pretty. So this one took a little convincing, but I finally, after a year or so talking about it, let her go out, and we bought 10 Katahdin hair sheep. And let me tell you, if I would have known how easy these were, we would have sold the cows on the first day of the drought and bought sheep. I mean, these things are easier to manage. The water requirements are much less. They graze very well. They're extremely easy to handle. This is a picture of my neighbor's 2-acre vineyard. We're now grazing it at least once a year, and he pays us a case of wine. How many guys have ever got paid to graze their cows? Lynette has owned these lambs now since September of 2012. So far, she has 3 bags of mineral and about 12 small square bales of hay invested, besides the initial cost. Last year, she had 162% lamb crop in her first year. How many cow guys can say that ever? How many cow guys have ever topped 100%? Guys, these are a no-brainer, and they are really a lot of fun to work with. We also run a few turkeys, mostly just for us and some family, but just another way to bring some diversity into the operation. So the next step for us was moving to a grass-finished operation. Our operation is now moving more and more towards a total forage operation, probably. It's not going to happen this year. I love to farm, but I would guess before I retire, we'll probably be more of a dominant forage system. And I think a really important part of doing the grass-fed is, as producers, and especially me being farmer-based, we have been bred and educated and told by the government, by industry, by universities for the last 50-plus years that we are commodity farmers. And people, that is a lie. And when I lived the commodity life for 30 years, that's what I was. It was bottom line, bushels and dollars. We are not commodity farmers, people. We grow food. And when you start realizing that you grow food, your whole emphasis changes. And it's really sad to go around and listen to some of these people talk that tell me that what they're growing they would not feed to their family. That's a scary statement to hear out of a farmer, and I've heard it more than once in the last year. That they grow it, but they go to the farmer's market or they go to the garden to get their food. They would not feed this to their family. And when we start putting the emphasis on food instead of on commodities, you start looking at your farm differently. And we're going to get more in deep with this tomorrow, so we'll just put it on pause right now. But the next step for us is going to a grass finish operation. And if you know much about grass finish, I've been told over and over, I'll never eat another one of those steaks. If you know how to grow it, you know how to grow it right, this steak is as good as any. And yes, there are grass finished genetics out there, but this was a bucket calf we got out of a feedlot. As you can see, she's a Charolais that is not a grass-based calf. She ate really good. It was a really good steak. So you can make anything work. It just takes some changes in management. We are changing our herd. We're going to more British whites to bring in more forage-based genetics into our operation. But also the other good part of growing food instead of commodities is when you start direct marketing, you get paid like you're growing food instead of a commodity also. And that's another large part of it. And I think the one thing that gets missed in the whole talk of soil health from a farming or a livestock perspective is the importance of dry area. Because when we talk about the ecosystem, when you think holistically, you've got to manage the entire system and the importance that this guy brings to the system, the entire insect world. And I understand that we have to make money, and when a pest comes into your soybeans or into your crop, and you think you've got to take care of it, but when you have your emphasis is on soil health, and you learn to be patient and put some trust in Mother Nature, we have not had to spray insecticides now for 5 years. And there's been a couple of sleepless nights wondering if Mother Nature's going to show up, but so far she has every time. For every insect on the planet that is a pest, and I think there's around 1,700 different species of insects that are considered pest or crops on the planet. For every one of those species of insects, there's 3,500 more species that are either predators of that, or we don't even know yet what they do. And we come in and want to nuke the one bad guy. We're nuking an awful lot of good guys too. And it's starting to show up with the monarchs that are starting to become extinct. There's worries about them, and the honeybees, and the importance, we all know the importance that honeybees bring to agriculture. And it has already been talked about the ants and the importance of them. And ants are considered one of the biggest predators of all insects. When the ants come out to play, even the big predators like the wolf spiders go home. No one wants to deal with the ants. And then the unintended consequences, or not consequences, but the unintended results is what follows the insects is the bird population and the other things that start coming in. In Kansas, our state bird is the meadowlark, and the meadowlark numbers are doing this. Not on my farm. Meadowlarks are going up. We've got more species of birds today than we had 30 or 40 years ago. And the mob grazing does not affect that. And Neil Dennis told me that. It was hard to believe until we seen it. But when the cow has the option, and I've got a wider zoom on this picture, I wish I'd put it in, but this clump of rye was grazed. It's clipped off at the top. But the nest, they went around it. And if you give the cow the opportunity, even in the mob, she's going to go around that nest every chance she gets. And we've talked about that, and this is another aspect that the cows bring to the soil health, is the explosion we see below ground after the cows are gone. And when we start managing holistically with our both insecticides on our farm, we have to think the same way with our livestock. We do not put insecticides on our livestock either. We're now entering year 5 or year 6 with no insecticides in the cows. And lo and behold, guess what showed up? Dung wasp, dung beetles, cowbirds, and that is our insect control now for our livestock, along with the chickens. And again, everything having multiple jobs. The dung beetle disposing of the dung pies, but also look at the infiltration. Look at the hole there, how much water can run in that hole. 2 years ago, we were about a week into breeding season, and our boll went down. And we've since changed the way we manage. We now do mob breeding as well, but we were now into breeding season without a boll, so we called down one from a neighbor who had a boll he wasn't using. We went and picked him up. We hauled him 10 miles, and this is what he looked like after a 10-mile haul and turning him out with my cows. This is a conventionally managed bull that had been given all the antibiotics and insecticides that he needed. And look at the fly load on his back. And look at my cow standing next to him. And it was several weeks before he looked like they did. Because, trust me, the cowbirds and everything else wanted nothing to do with flies that were full of insecticide. They bypassed it. They let them stay on him. And I mentioned a little bit about the wildlife that will show up with the cover crops. And you have to manage for this, because they will show up in droves. They need to be part of your grazing plan. You need to plan for this. And you have a choice to make. You can either complain about it, or you can charge your neighbors $100 to come take care of it for you, and they'll pay you. And in my area, they'll pay you a lot more than $100 to get one of those. Prairie chicken is another one in our area that the numbers are on the decline, but on our farm, the prairie chicken numbers are climbing along with the quail. So, this is where we want to be. This is what our feedlot looks like today, as opposed to 5 years ago where this would have been a bunk. But how do we get to this? How do we get from the feedlot to bringing the livestock back onto the land? Well, obviously, number one, you have to have water. And so and this now, for the government employees that are out here, this is my demand from you. NRCS, and I hear this from other producers. I don't think I'm just talking for myself. We're tired of programs also. We need help. And this is one of the areas we need it. We need help designing watering system, finding water, getting it to the livestock, and figuring out what the benefits the livestock are bringing to the land. This is much more important for most of us producers than your free money and all the red tape that goes with it. We would much rather have help designing things like this. This is one of the ways we do it. Especially in the summer, it's really important to keep water close to the cattle. And especially if you're going on gain, you've got to have that water within 1,000 feet. In the winter, I don't care. My cows can go a quarter, half a mile of water in the winter. It's not that big a deal if we have to. But when it's hot, you've got to be close. So what we do now is when we're running water lines, we'll install risers every 400, 500, 600 feet. These are a quick couple riser. This is the end when that's screwing onto a garden hose, just like that. Down into the riser, quick couple, and that fast we have water. And we use garden hose, and you've seen this tank that we're using. We water 90 to 100 head out of that tank. And it's more than enough. That's because we keep the water close, and when the cattle are in the mob, I think Matt talked about it earlier, the one thing a mob does is changes the attitude of the herd. when you have water this close, the cattle never come to water at once. It's just like the merry-go-round at the fair. There's a few getting on, a few getting off, and they just continue coming through constantly. So as long as you keep the water close, that's what happens. If you're going to make the cattle go 2,000 or 3,000 feet, you better have a large tank and a big pipe bringing water to it, because they're all going to come at once. We're going to actually build some skids on this so I can pull it with my four-wheeler, because I'm way too lazy to be dragging this tank very far.
Didn't look to me like you're dragging it anywhere. Looks like she's doing all the work.
You noticed she's not here today, didn't you? Another thing we've done is we bought with the help of a CIG grant, we did buy a solar-powered portable pumping system. We can pump out of a well, out of a pond, out of a stream, whatever we need to get water for the cattle. We can pump about 10, 11 gallons a minute with this. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy. This is my friend Brian Feather, who also builds the chicken tractors for us. This was his first attempt at a portable watering system. He bought nothing for this. It was all built with scrap out behind the barn, and I'm sure most of you have a pile of stuff that you can find things to work. This system did not work for him, but instead of scrapping, he went back and redesigned it, and he's going to try it again this spring. Fencing buggy. A lot of guys use a four-wheeler. King, who was in the picture earlier, one of my mentors. This is, I can't remember if it was a Mitsubishi or a little Subaru or something they bought, stripped it down, turned it into a tour wagon and a fencing mobile. One thing Ken said is when you're going across the pasture, don't talk on the cell phone. In fact, don't do anything that might have your mouth open. And again, and here's Lynette doing more of the work. You want it to be easy because you definitely want your wife or girlfriend to do the work for you so that you can go around the country and meet new people and not have to be at home. But, you know, it was really funny because when we started doing the really intense grazing and moving the fence daily, in the first few weeks or months that we did it, my hired man and I would kind of argue, okay, when you go build a fence, I'll graze the combine. After a few weeks, it went the other way around. I'll go build the fence, you go grease the combine. This is the best hour of the day, guys. It really is a pleasure. We set up our paddocks here. We use spring or bungee gates attached to a solar-powered digital timer. We set the timer for whatever time we want the cows to move into the next paddock. When the timer goes off, the latch here opens up, which throws the spring open, which opens the gate and allows the mob to move. It's as hard as that. Now my cows, I told you they had experience. They've been trained to hot wire, and we've been doing some rotational grazing every few days, every few weeks. And my cows understood hot wire, and they understood how to move through a gate. This style here, it took us 3 days to train them to this timer. For the first 3 days, we had to show up, push the cows through. After that, they knew the sound. And now when we want to move the cows to a new pasture, instead of having to buy pellets, which I hate because first of all, we're non-GMO, so we kind of done away with that. Now we just take the spring off the gate, attach it to the four-wheeler, pull it back, call the cows, snap the gate, here they come. That's how we move them. They know the sound of the gate. And also, there's a learning experience for the cattle as well as for you. And you've always got the loafers out there watching the butterflies. Trust me, on day 2, she was not at the back of the pack. Because look what the pack is doing. What do you suppose she got to eat when she got in there? Nothing. That is the idea of the mob, is the competition. That's why we get higher utilization. These cows will eat the weeds, they'll eat anything we're wanting. This is great management for regenerating and for managing our grasses. And as you notice, one thing we've learned, instead of grazing down here, we now like to get the cover crop a little further along. This is probably a little too mature, but still this is extremely high quality because we do have lagoons and stuff down in here low that's extremely high quality grazing for us. But we want as much carbon both for the cows and for the system, so we're getting a lot more trample and leaving a lot more in here than we would be in here. This is a warm season mix, same thing. We like plenty of stuff out there when we turn them in. At the beginning of the presentation, we talked about the 20-way warm season, cool season mix. This is just another example of this. This one, we did not put the sunflowers in as heavily. This was designed solely as a grazing mix. Here we are late October, we've had the first frost, so the warm season mix is now froze out. And got out of order here. And then I guess we'll see in a little bit, there's lagoons and stuff underneath here, providing the cool season now starting to flourish, providing the protein. A huge benefit of the mob grazing, not only seeing the cattle every day, being able to check on the health of the herd, but this is the mental, the joy of it, because this is how your herd now acts. Instead of being afraid of you, they look forward to seeing you. I mean, you can walk right up, walk amongst them. They are as friendly as you can be. How many guys can get down on the ground with a baby calf and not have to worry about mom trampling you, and the calf even walking up to you, and I got pictures of the calf sucking on my knee, and you can see, the mom is here, they're watching, but that's all, they're watching. As long as I'm okay, they're okay. When we got the sheep, we were told we couldn't graze the sheep into high carbon crops because sheep had to have the line of sight. You had to have the cover crop below it where they could see over it. And yes, the sheep really don't like going into this. The cows will have an issue too going into those tall covers. And once they learn, they figure that out, they dive right in, and it's not a problem. Until 2009 or 2010, we had 0 perennials in our operation. In fact, I had 6-year-old cows that had never touched grass. They had only lived on cover crops. We're now, as I mentioned earlier, bringing more perennials in. What we learned in our first 15 acres of perennials we planted were in 2009. This was a 6-way cool season mix that we mob grazed the year before. And this paddock here, we'd mob them in the fall, moving the cows once a day. We went over to the next paddock, which was this paddock here, and we mobbed the cows, moving them 3 times a day, 3 to 4 times a day. And this is what we had on June 15th, the following summer. This was off the paddock that we mobbed them 4 times a day, moving them 4 times a day. June 15th, this is what it looked like on the one where we'd only moved them once a day. This is how fast we saw an increase in production. Can you do this every time? No, I don't think so. We probably got lucky. We did something really right here. This does show you how fast you can regenerate and how much increase you can get in production. On June 15th, this one had been mobbed off once and was waiting for rain. And on June 15th, this one had been mobbed off once also. And was ready for the second graze. We increased our production 50% just because of increasing our intensity one time across the ground. This is a warm season mix where we had one of we have lots of failures, but we don't call them failures, we call them learning experiences. Otherwise, I'd want to shoot myself by now. So, this is one where we learned that you don't put a lot of sedan into what you're wanting to be a diverse mix. The sedan's a little aggressive, and it took over. As you can see, there's one sunflower here trying to live, and there was a cowpea scattered and a little sunham scattered throughout. But for the most part, the sedan and the millet took over. We winter grazed this paddock. We turned in just before Christmas. You can see some of the sedan and millets had actually put a little seed on, but look how much we're trampling and leaving on the ground. And look at the manure distribution. If you just turn the cattle out into a pasture or into a field, it takes about 20 years to get a cow pie every square yard. I can do that in a few hours. It's not hard to do. And look at, I talked about earlier, the cows know how to graze through the snow. It's not a problem. They know how to go find it. They know what their job is, and they do it. And my cows are very photogenic. They all like to ham it up for the camera. So, and the value of the manure off of this one winter graze that we got, these are NRCS numbers, but about 70 pounds of manure per beef unit per day. A beef unit is a 1,000-pound unit. We had 56 head of cattle on there, which come out to the equivalent of about 66 beef units. So we were putting down 4,620 pounds a day. We were grazing 6 days per acre. And we put down almost 14 ton of manure per acre. That's almost enough for a corn crop. 90% of what goes in the front of a cow comes out the back. What about the increase in organic matter? We left 2 to 3 ton of residue on that soil. How much organic matter did we build that year? We've got a couple guys in Kansas starting to document at least 0.2% per acre per year. 20 years ago, they would have called us a liar if we told them we could do that. And there's still scientists today that would call us a liar if we told them we could do that. What about the value of the urine? For every manure dump, there's 5 urine dumps. And how much value, we know there's a lot of value that comes with that as well. What about the cost? Talked about that early on. I didn't have to swath, rake, bale, haul the hay to the farm, haul the used hay back to the cows in the winter and put it out. Or haul the hay back to the cows and haul the used hay back to the field and spread it in the spring. She's portable, she did it all for me. And you saw how much residue we were putting down on the ground. April 8th, OP crop planted into it. Where'd all my residue go? We cannot get enough carbon into our system today. When we started planting cover crops, our C-N ratio on our covers was in the upper teens and lower 20s. Today, if it's not around 40, I'm not interested. We have to get carbon in the system. We've got it so active, there's so many microbes, so many earthworms. We've got to get a lot more carbon. A lot of times we don't even graze half anymore. We graze a third because it takes that much to feed the below ground livestock. Dwayne Beck taught me for years that the value of residue is priceless. And the one thing we've learned through our drought, if residue is priceless, what's organic matter worth? This field here you're looking at was all drilled to this during the drought in 2012. So why do I have this? Ray, you got any ideas?
When you get around the perimeters, do you have any residue on it?
We had residue. All the residue was here.
Fed a hay bale or something.
Fed a hay bale there. The cows, we bale grazed, so there's only one bale on that one spot. There was very little hay left, and by the time we planted the mix several months later, there was 0 residue in this spot. We had nice residue out here. This would have been a cereal mix that we would have grazed down. We had good residue around that bale. But the only place we grew anything was when we really jumped our organic matter way up. Organic matter trumps residue every time. This was Lynette when we brought the lambs home. We already talked about how little she's got in them and what a good financial return. 20-some inches of snow last spring in 3 days, and we were a little nervous about the sheep. We knew the cows could handle this. We found out the sheep have no problems as well. And it was interesting. This actually is our garden they were grazing off, and from right here back, you can't see it, but they had been on that for the previous week, and they can go back on that right now. And during the whole week the snow was on, they never once went back. How did they know there was nothing there? I mean, this looked like it was completely tilled from here to the north. They could smell it, or they remembered that well, but they knew where the good stuff was at and knew where to go dig. Here's back in sequence with the picture seen earlier with the warm season, cool season mix that we're grazing late October. And there you can see underneath the canopy all of the green from the cool season mix now getting its time in the sun. And there's just a little closer picture under the canopy, the oats, some of the brassicas, things like that. And you want to do your homework before you start grazing, because there's forage plants and then there's forage plants. And you guys all know about the tillage radish, the nitro radish. This is what it looks like. There's pretty good forage there, right? We know about everything it can do below ground. But this is a forage brassica. A little difference here. What's this? This is a forage brassica. Understand what each of these things can do, because for the same money, if you're wanting a grazer, which one do you want? Oh, and cows won't eat turnips, so don't put any turnips in your grazing mix. So, how fast can we do this? How fast can we regenerate? Well, how many thousands of years does it take to build an inch of soil, Ray?
Pretty close to 1,000 years.
This is a soil pit we dug on our farm last summer. This is Dr. Joe Clapperton, for those of you that don't know. Where we built this pit, this is where we really started in 2003 with the cover crops and the cows. And this is on the edge of our feed lot. So since the 80s, we have wintered cattle on this 20 acres. And you guys know what it looks like when you winter cattle somewhere. The cattle come off a month later than they should have. And we would go out and shift 2 or 3 times. And if we got lucky, we could get it planted maybe to a soybean crop or a sorghum silage crop, which got chopped. No residue at all in the system. Cattle got turned back out on it. And after 20 years, the knobs in this field, the A horizon was gone, probably quite a bit. We were showing nothing but red clay, starting to look like Oklahoma on the knobs. The rest of the field, we probably had anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of topsoil left at the most. Yes, sir.
What is your precip? How much precip is normal? Normal precip, how much do you get?
Normal precip is 37 inches. We've been so long. Last year we were actually normal, except we got 18 inches of it in 16 days. We really have not had a normal precip year since '99. We either in 08, 09, I talked about we were the 2 wettest years on record. We were 40-some and 50-some inches in those 2 years. So we're either rich or poor. So we started in this field in 03. We started no-till in 95. And in 03, this is where we started playing with really intense with the covers. And we had no cash crops for 10 years. It was just all cover crops and grazing it and trying to figure out, we were just trying to literally figure out, can we grow it? And if so, will they eat it? And to be quite honest with you, will it kill them? I mean, where do you go for help? You know, there was no university work, nobody in RCS knew anything. I mean, we were doing our own research. So our first 9 cows, we traded a load of corn for 9 cold cows from a guy, and I just prayed we didn't kill them, we turned them out. A lot of stuff we'd never seen before. So, and for 10 years, our management here was really average at best, because there were times that we were intentionally overgrazing something just to see how the plant would respond, or how the cows would respond. So our management here wasn't really good for 10 years. And now we're going back into cash crops here. But this is the soil pit that we dug. And this picture is really hard to see, but look at all the streaking. We now have black soil down 4 to 5 foot in this pit. And here you can see how fast we're turning this over. Dr. Clapperton was absolutely shocked when we dug this. I was shocked. We did not expect to see anything like this. We are building soil very, very rapidly. Most important thing to do is to have fun. And limitations, until you spread your wings, you'll have no idea how far you can walk. And here's a few of the things I like. Do we have time for questions, Jay, or do we need to move?